I had quite a long break from drawing, and I made the huge mistake of trying to pick up where I left off a year or two ago. I got out my supplies, created the outline for a fairly large drawing, and got to work. And of course it didn't go well. I actually had a bit of a meltdown because I thought that I'd never be able to create the types of drawings that I was doing a year or two ago. But creating artwork is my life, so I knew that I couldn't just give up. I had to think about this differently and try something else. This drawing that you see on the screen now was my solution to all of the problems that I'm going to talk about, and I'll tell you why you should do the same if you've had a break from art or you're lacking confidence for any reason. The first problem that I had was that I chose a paper that I hadn't used before. And this probably sounds really obvious, but if you're not familiar with the supplies that you're using, you're probably not going to be able to create your best work. I had so much trouble with the paper that I chose, and it didn't allow me to add as many layers as I wanted, and it turned out looking really grainy. So for this new attempt of this baby cow or calf, I went back to the paper that I always use for pastels, which is Clairefontaine Pastel Matte. I'm really familiar with this paper, and honestly, I don't know why I bothered with the new paper because I already know that nothing else compares to Pastel Matte. On this paper, I'm always able to get a lot of layers and the results look smooth and vibrant. So the first lesson here is to use familiar suppliers. If you're getting back into art after a break, now might not be the best time to try something new because it probably won't look as good as your best work if it's your first time trying a new product. A year or two ago when I was drawing consistently, I liked to choose new things to draw because I love to challenge myself with my art. It gives me a sense of accomplishment and the confidence to keep trying new subjects. I was a bit naive to think that I could jump straight into a challenging subject after such a long time without drawing. The solution was to draw something simple or familiar, and I chose this simple brown calf. There's usually a subject that people tend to gravitate towards, and that's going to be different for everyone, but if you like drawing eyes or dogs or butterflies or tigers, doesn't really matter what it is, but basically choose something that you're familiar with so that you're not having to think about how to create certain textures or colours because you've done this in the past before. And if you feel like you don't have something familiar or easy to start with, you could just go one step further and follow a beginner's tutorial step by step. That way you really don't have to make any decisions, but you're getting the feel for your supplies again and getting used to the process of using them. So the second lesson is to choose an easy subject or something that you have drawn in the past and feel confident with. Are you struggling to make your artwork look more realistic? Or are you confused about which supplies to buy, which colours to use, and how to start your drawing? After sharing hundreds of my art tutorials, I've learned that most people go through the same struggles and have the same questions when it comes to learning how to draw realistically. And that is why I have created these tutorials, so you don't have to go through valuable years of trial and error and research and frustration. Join me and hundreds of other students just like you. Not only will you get access to a library of tutorials in a range of different mediums like pastels, coloured pencils, charcoal, watercolour and graphite, my tutorials are real-time and full-length, so they don't skip over any important sections or speed up any parts of the process. And they are fully narrated with voiceover instructions that explain exactly what I'm doing and why I'm making these choices, so you really can follow along every step of the way. Each tutorial comes with a full supply list, including the names of the colours I'm using, as well as any reference photos that you might need, including a traceable outline. So you can grow and develop your drawing and painting skills and take your art to the next level. Why not give it a go and join me and hundreds of other students just like you by clicking on the link in the description below. Another mistake that I made was that I chose a large piece of paper and a reference photo where I zoomed really far into the subject's face and cropped it there, so there was going to be a lot of detail. You can see what I mean when you put these two reference photos next to each other. You can clearly see all of the little fur detail on the face when you're zoomed in like that, compared to a full body portrait where you can barely see any of that texture in the fur. I spent a lot of time worrying about layering and creating all of that detail. I also had to stress about things like getting my proportions right, using a combination of different supplies, making sure that my values were correct and choosing the right colours. I just had too many things to think about, and it had been too long since my last drawing for these things to come naturally. I honestly set myself up for failure with this combination. I chose the wrong paper, a difficult subject, I used too many suppliers, and I chose a large and detailed drawing. So the third lesson is to start small so that you're forced to focus on the values rather than worrying about adding layers and layers of tiny details on a large drawing. All of these problems that I came across created a compound effect on my confidence. I felt like I was never going to be able to draw like I used to, and it really made me lack confidence in my own ability. I literally broke down and had a bit of a crying session before talking to my partner about this. And I realized that I would never put this much pressure on one of my students if they had a break from art. So why am I putting this much pressure on myself to create a masterpiece straight away? I had to remind myself that the reason I create art is because I enjoy doing it and it makes me feel accomplished and proud when I finish a drawing. I also needed to remember that there are so many of you who reach out to me because you're going through or have been through something similar to what I'm going through with these health issues. So I wanted to be transparent and share the struggles that I'm going through and let you know that it's okay to take a step back and create something that you find easy to start with. So what I recommend doing is picking a limited amount of supplies. I chose to just use pastel pencils on a familiar paper. Start with an easy or familiar subject that you feel confident creating. Choose a smaller piece of paper to work on because it will be quicker for you to finish. And this was really important to me because I felt like I needed some reassurance pretty quickly. If I spent a few days working on a larger piece, I may have given up, whereas I could finish this piece in a few hours and feel accomplished with my result. Choose something with less detail or do a full body portrait of an animal on a smaller piece of paper so that you don't see as much detail. This way you don't have to worry about adding tiny little textures and lots of layers. You can just concentrate on your proportions and values. You could even go one step further and remove the colour altogether and just use black and white in whatever medium you're working with. That way you don't even have to worry about your colour choices at all, you can just focus on your proportions and your values. Art is supposed to be fun, so don't put too much pressure on yourself to create a masterpiece every single time, especially when you've come back from a break. Another great way to ease back into drawing is to follow a beginner's tutorial that takes you back to the basics. In this video, I take you through how to draw a simple bird only using pastel pencils. So click on that and I'll see you over there.